suppose that, girls, you can't realize how happy this old lady is tonight. I declare I feel happier, I'll bet you, than Bart Starr ever did when he won it. And I'm sure he never had an audience like this to look at. I'm as pleased as I can be, and before I get to talk the little bit of things that I wanted to tell you, because I have to have thought this out, I want to thank you for inviting me. This has been a great thrill to me. I never was a dormitory girl except when I was an old lady in the University of Minnesota. For 2 summers I was in the dormitory, and it never was like this. And I enjoy every minute of it. I want you to remember, one of the nicest things in my life is to have this lovely hall named for the Roaches that came from Ireland the same year from the same place that the Kennedys did. I suppose that I might just as well tell you, I suppose they were all starved out together. I know that the boys went farther than the girls, but they haven't had any better time. I tell you that by way of introduction. Now, I really did think of what I was going to say tonight. I haven't even thought of how long I was going to talk, so most of you better start saying your prayers. I can generally get wound up, you know, when I get in spirit like this. I had a letter from Susan, which is a letter that I will keep always, the letter that invited me to come. I want to tell you why I'm going to keep it. It was written well. There wasn't a mistake in it from first to last. I said, I hope that she gets an A in English, or she already has, because I would mark her for an A in English, but that isn't the reason I'm keeping the letter. The reason I'm keeping the letter is that she said, Miss Roach, maybe during the evening sometime you could talk to us a little while. And then she said, I was going to find time to ask her what she wanted me to say, because I'm perfectly sure she knows what she wants me to say, and I haven't had time to ask her. In the letter she said, perhaps you could talk to us a little while about the real meaning of Christmas. Now, I know that a group of girls who have that kind of spirit inside of themselves that kind of group will go a long way all together, and I know each one of you will, one by one. I've been around through the halls, and I've seen the decorations that there are all the way through, and every side of the Christmas idea is someplace in front of you. I hope you'll watch them. I said to some of the girls who are going to be teachers, you better get your notebook out and keep track of some of these things, because I know places where you can use them. I'm sure they will do that. But that isn't what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. I realize that in a group like this, there might be 3 classes of people. We are getting ready to celebrate the birthday of a king. Most of us will be Christians, and so we'll realize that we are going to celebrate the birthday of that person that we say is divine and came to the earth for a little while. But there could very well be in this group another group. There could be that Jewish group. I had a lovely time day before yesterday. I have such a good Jewish friend in Eau Claire. I call him my broker because I have $1,000 invested with him. And he was at our house the other day, and I told him that I was coming down here. Fact is, I showed him that letter, and I'm going down to talk about Christmas. And I said, now listen till I tell you when I get it up. I'm talking about what really is a Christian holiday, a Christian holiday, I said. I said, now, there may be some Jewish people there. I hope there are. And he said, listen, my dear. He's a good-looking man, and I still want to hear. Listen, my dear, he said, if I could believe that he were the Messiah that we were promised, I would be a Christian. I don't believe that, but I am just as proud as I can be that he is a boy from my race. Isn't that nice? And so I'm perfectly sure that he knows that Jesus did a great deal of good when he came to this earth. He didn't have to think he was divine. I have a great deal of respect for President Kennedy. I have a great deal of respect. I read over and over the things that he said when he said, think not so much of what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I'm perfectly sure that that phrase will influence my life. And I'm just as sure as I'm living that many of the phrases that Jesus taught when he was here influenced the life of my good Jewish friends. Now, in this group, there could be somebody who doesn't believe in the hereafter at all. It's perfectly all right, isn't it, in America, to be what some people call an atheist. They just don't believe in any hereafter at all. I have a friend like that. Now, one day he said he was my college teacher in speech. I love him too. One day he said to me, one day in a class he said, last night the atheistic group met on this campus. I was older too, but I was sitting in the front row. And as we were going out, he said to me, Miss Roach, I suppose you were surprised this morning when I said that I belonged to the atheistic group. I said, yes, I was a little surprised. But I'm perfectly sure that in America we can have an atheistic group. I said, I quite didn't believe that you belong, but now that you do, I'm glad you told me. I said, I want you to have the idea that you can belong. I want you to know that May Roach is sorry for you. But I said, otherwise, I have the same kind of respect I had for you. Now, I want us to think that in a college like this, we have to recognize the beliefs and the thoughts of other people. One of the things that I shall never forget in my connection with this college is the Christmas concert that we used to have when Mr. Mickelson was here. And in that lovely, lovely orchestra that he had, 3 or 4 of the leading people in that orchestra were Jewish people. And they helped to make that lovely concert a success. Nobody ever found fault with it. I suppose that they were thinking, this is one of our boys that has done this much for the world. Sometimes I talk to my Jewish friends like that, and I say, now, would it offend anybody? I'm going to talk to a mixed group. Would it offend anybody in your group if I said thus and so? And my Jewish friends say, no, May, most of what you had you got from us. Isn't that good? And then I always say, that's true, but you stopped and we went along. And we're good friends all the way through. I think that's one thing I want to say to you, that you must always have respect for the other people's thinking. Now I'm going to tell you 2 things that I think Christmas should teach us. We are all getting ready to look for the birthday of a king. Now, why did he come? He came to the earth to give his whole life, his whole world, for the good of other people. And I want us to remember now, you and I and everybody, that that's the only reason you are here. And I think that most of the problems that there are in the world now is come from the fact that people have forgotten that. We're all glad to celebrate Christmas. We're all glad to know the birthday of a great king. We all profess that. But many times afterwards we go out and we act as though we'd forgotten all about it. I'm going to tell you a little thing that I think all of us should remember. When you were born, you came onto the earth with a certain amount of native ability. It was buried in you. I look at it real often because, you know, in our family now, I have 75 grandnieces and nephews and know where the next one's coming. Isn't that something? So I stand by tiny babies real often, and I look at them close to our family, and I say to myself, I wonder what native ability there is in you. I wonder, this is a little package that the Lord sent to the earth through the miracle of birth to give us a gift with some native ability that he knows the world needs. And all we have to do is to develop that native ability that we have. Now, I want us to remember that it is the individual, it is my responsibility to develop the native ability that the Lord gave me. It is your responsibility to develop yours. You can't lay it onto your teachers or your parents or your community. You must remember that the state of Wisconsin has provided this lovely, lovely place for you. But it's provided for an environment in which you can develop your native ability. And someday, as sure as I'm living, somebody will say, did you develop it? Don't you see? Now, I know it's hard. I know it's hard, but all things that are important are hard. I have a little poem, and I'm going to give it, it's a little bit of easy poem, but it's about that particular thing. I must study my lessons every day. I must ask questions. I must contribute. I must say, how am I better at the end of this course to live in this world, to do something to make the world a better place because I came than I would have been if I never came here, than I would have been if I'd never been in that class. We've got to ask ourselves. One time over on the 3rd floor in the old building at the morning about 8 o'clock, I heard a nice voice say, Miss Roach, I found something last night. There were a lot of seats up there in that 3rd floor that we used to call the Rural Assembly Room. And coming down there was a double aisle, and coming down there was a young man, a student in this college, who's one of the best teachers, the superintendents that there is in this state today. He was about 18 or 19 years old. It was the second year here. And he came down that aisle and he said, Miss Roach, I found something in my reading last night that if we could get it into the minds of all people who are going to school, we would change every school there is. Now listen. Do you want to know what he found? If you don't, you're already dead. See, your curiosity is there. Are you curious to know what it was he had? See, I'd had him in classes. He wasn't a star in a football game. He wasn't in a basketball. He never won the oratorical contest. He never did anything like that. He just paid attention in classes, and he did everything for everybody. You know, he said, I said, Hans, for pity's sake, what did you find? He said, well, I tell you, I wish everybody could get it. See, he found it. He recognized it. And then he said, I wish everybody could have it. And he said, you know, you run around so much and talk so much, I made a copy for you. Now, girls, listen till I tell you something. See, he found it. He recognized it. He said, I wish it could get around. He wanted to share it. And he said, how can I get it around? And he said, the old lady on the third floor. But you see what he did? He did something. He did something. He didn't stand there and find fault. He didn't complain. I'm going to say it for you tonight. It's just 3 little stanzas, and it can fit in a 6th grader. For instance, I said it last year to a group of people who were in the 7th grade, and I've had any number of people call me about it. I've had women write me letters and ask me if they could have a copy of it. And I always said, listen, I didn't find this. It was Hans Christensen that found it. And he didn't come from Dublin. You see that? Hans Christensen. I wish some of you knew him. He used to be up north of Antigo. I wonder where he is right now. Do you want me to say it? Well, this is it. The title of it is Effort. Effort. And it's 3 stanzas long, and it's a little poem that a mother wrote the day her little boy brought his report card home. But it's just exactly as good for me right now as it was for a little 6th grade boy. The mother wrote it, and it said, he brought me his report card from his teacher, and he said he wasn't very proud of it, and sadly bowed his head. He was excellent in reading, in arithmetic was fair. I noticed there were several unsatisfactories there, but a little bit of credit that was given brought me joy. He was excellent in effort, and I fairly hugged the boy. Oh, it doesn't make much difference what's written on that card, I told the little fellow, just so you're trying hard. Those very goods and excellence are fine, I must agree, but the effort that you're making means a whole lot more to me. And the thing of most importance when this card is laid aside is to know, in spite of failure, that to do your best you try. So keep excellent in effort. All the rest will come to you, and there isn't any problem but someday you'll learn to do. Sometime you will discover, you will come to understand, that by hard and patient effort men have risen to command. And at last you will discover, when a greater goal's at stake, that better far than brilliance is the effort that you make. Isn't that a nice thing? Do you agree with him? Do you agree with him? Girls, the first year after I retired, I came back to Stevens Point in February. There were 1,300, I think, something like that, enrolled. They had just dropped out a little over 100 people on account of poor scholarship. These were people who said they wanted to go to college, who had come a half year or a whole year or a year and a half, and were dropped out because their scholarship was so poor. I read the list. They were people that I knew. Girls, I am telling you that more than 75% of those people did not need to drop out if they had used the ability that the Lord gave them. If they had used the little thought that's in that poem, they didn't need to drop out. They fiddled at something else when they should have been working. You see that? Well, I tell you what I did. I went to Clara. It worried me. It worried me to think that more than 8% of our people were dropped out because of poor scholarship. And so I went to Clara and I went down to the college to find out what the number of people were that dropped out there in the college. So I said to Dr. Eamon, how many people did you drop out? And he told me, and I said, well, my goodness, isn't that a lot? He said, well, you know, our standards are higher than they are at Stevens Point. Oh, I had a notion to kick him in the shins. It is not true, but he thinks it is. Well, then listen till I tell you something, girls. That year, I went down to Illinois, to Charleston, Illinois, where Dr. Doudna, who used to be here, is president of the college, the University of Illinois at Charleston. And I said to him, what percentage of people did you drop out? And he said, oh, Miss Roach, our percent will be much higher than it is in any college because a university college is higher. I just now read a letter in which they are not going to accept more than the people who are in the upper 40% of their classes now, you see. Now it had been 70 cents to 40%. So that means that some people aren't going to get in at all. So it's up to all of us to work to do the thing that you came here to do. Now that's one thing. I got that done. Do you wish I'd stop now because I'm only half through? The other thing that I want to tell you came from the experience that I've had just now. And I would like to share that experience because when I talk to the girls in this hall, I'm not making a speech. I'm chatting with you and telling you the things that I would tell to my own daughters if I had daughters, you see. I tell them to my nieces. This is a thing that happened, and it happened to me just about 2-3 weeks ago. They called me and asked me if I would come to the Exchange Club in Eau Claire, which is a man's service club. I had been there 3 or 4 times to talk at meetings when the person that they had asked couldn't get there, and I pinch hit. I'm a great pinch hitter because I'm always handy, and they just call me and I go. Wind me up and I start. Well, I said, would you come to the Exchange Club when you don't have to do anything but just enjoy yourself? So I said I'd be delighted to go. They invited my sisters, but my sisters couldn't go. So I went. I had a lovely time. I went with Mr. and Mrs. Kerr. Earl Kerr, who's a graduate of this college. His sister-in-law is Mrs. Gotham. Dr. Gotham is on your college faculty, you know. So here they were. I had such a nice time, and then they came to their program. And in the course of this program, I discovered why I was there at all. Every year, the exchange clubs in a great many places pick out somebody to honor. They say, we're going to put your name in our Golden Age book. And it is just lovely. It is just lovely. And then they have a big one like this that they keep in the library. And the reason I was there was because I was going to have my name put in the exchange in this Golden Age, this Golden Deeds book. I was thrilled, no end. I had no idea that I was going to be that, but thrilled as I could be. I wanted to be there, but I didn't know how I could get there. I'd never thought of it. Well, then a young man got up, and his name was Jack Murphy, I think, and he read beautifully why I was in there. I have that all printed in a book at home, and it's just lovely. And the biggest thing that's in that, the biggest reason I was there was not because I was a straight A, or it wasn't because I'm an old lady for nearly 80 years old, or it wasn't because I had taught for so long. It wasn't at all. It was because I had done so many things all around in community projects. Listen, I had done so many things in community projects. I've been in this thing and that thing and the other thing. It's all written in that book. It's just lovely. Well, listen, I got it and took it home. But 2 weeks before that, 1 week before I heard this at all, I'd made up my mind about something. I decided that I was not going to do another single thing this year, no matter what anybody asked. I had entirely decided that I wasn't going to do it. I said I do too much, and I run too much, and I'm too old, and I'm too tired. And I was tired when I said it. Made my mind up. When anybody asks me, I'm going to say no. Because people tell me that I do things too easily. I remember once here, Mr. Neal, who was on the faculty, told me that. He said, May, you should say no sometimes. And I said, well, when they ask me if you can come on a certain day, I look in my book and I'm free. I have to go. I have to say I'm busy. He said, well, tell them you're busy. I said, that would be a lie if I'm not busy. He said, you better get a little bit busy resting. The next time a call came, it was from Eau Claire, a long-distance call, and I was in the office, and he sat there, and I answered the telephone. And it was a lady asking me if I would come and talk for the communion breakfast of the Catholic Women's Club in Eau Claire that was going to be at St. Patrick's Church, which is my church. Girls were just going to be ashamed of me. I said, "Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry I can't. I'm busy." I did it. See, there was the Lord on that side saying, "You do it." There was somebody else on this side saying, "Tell him no, tell him no." So I was busy. Well, isn't that too bad? They said, and all this sort of thing. And that was going to be 4 or 5 weeks ahead. And the week that they had that communion breakfast, I forgot all about it, and I went home. And I arrived home for a visit. And my sister said, "May, isn't this the day that they asked you to talk at that breakfast?" "Oh, it is." I had to hide and go to another church so they wouldn't. All true. I came back and I said to Mr. Neal, "I shall never lie again about anything like that." I said, "I shall never do it." And he had a good joke about it. Now listen, I had made up my mind I was never going to do a thing. I went home, and the next day after I got that from the exchange club, the telephone rang. And I was all alone in the house, and I went to the telephone with my mind all made up. No more. I've done more than my share. A lovely voice came over the telephone and said, "Miss Roach, I'm Mrs. Harkowski. I'm Mrs. Horlocker. I'm Mrs. Horlocker from Brackett," she said. I'd never heard of her. "I'm Mrs. Horlocker from Brackett," she said. "We have been wanting to get you to come down and talk to our PTA," she said, "but we never could get a hold of you." She said, "I know this is short notice. It's going to be next Wednesday." And I had my mouth all fixed to saying, "Dear Mrs. Horlacker, I'm busy," when right in front of me popped up that Exchange Club book. I saw it just as plainly as though somebody put it ahead of me. There it was. I wrote a letter to the Exchange Club and told them that they had made an old woman over. You see, I said to her, "Well, I've been awfully busy, but I guess I'll come." So I promised, and I wrote it in my book, and then the telephone rang a little bit afterwards, and she said, "Miss Roach, I didn't think to ask you, but we always have to know that. How much is your fee?" I had no to make it so high, they'd say we can't afford it. But see, it's only 12 miles away. It's only 12 miles, and I said, "Well, my dear, I guess I could come for nothing," and so I went. Now I did it. You see, I didn't want to do it. I was too tired. I thought I'd rather go to bed. I had a dozen reasons for not going. But the Exchange Club had told me some things that are important, and the Lord had me remember them in the proper time. And so I took it. Now I went, and I had a lovely, lovely time. Just a grand time. It was a grand group of women and all that, but that isn't what I want to tell you, the end of it, because I think this is lovely. There has been nothing except this. This will be the biggest thing in my life this year, coming here tonight. I think the next to that was beating Eau Claire at homecoming game. I'll never forget that. 6,000 steel players out there yelling, and I in the middle of it. See that sort of thing? I'll never forget that. Well, the next to that is this thing I'm going to tell you. About 3 days from that, our telephone rang. And I went to the telephone, and it was Mrs. Horlacker, the woman that I'd never seen, that I was almost ready to lie to, that took me down and gave me a chance to have a nice thing to remember. And she said, "Miss Roach, I had to call you again." She said, "You will never know what it meant to me to have you come down there that night." She said, "I have never heard you before. I am the mother of 3 children. She said, "I heard things that night that made me so proud of being a mother. It scared me because I realized my responsibility and my privilege, but I realized that if I ask for help, I can always get it. And I'm going at motherhood a lot harder than I ever did before because you came." Do you suppose this old maid likes that? You see? Don't you see an old maid who will never have, I'm sure I'll never have any. Do you suppose that I like to know that maybe I had a little bit somebody looked at that job that I think is the biggest job there is, that job of motherhood. And here you sit ahead of me right there, you see. I said, I read a little thing that Hal Boyle wrote the other day. He graduated from the University of Missouri. He had always wanted to be a teacher. In order to make his way through school, he got a little journalistic work to do, so he worked along part-time, and then he got interested in that and kept on going and going. And then he was making more money in journalism than he would teaching, so he stayed on in it. And the other day he said, I still would like to be a teacher. He said, I think the two greatest vocations there are in the world are motherhood and teachers, and I'm not built for the first one. Isn't that good? Isn't that good to know, Steve? Well, now I'm about done. See, I told you how glad I was to be here. I told you that each one of us has a responsibility to develop our own abilities. And girls, let me add you this. Don't find an alibi for failing in something. Don't. If you're having a hard job, find some help someplace, go to a teacher, do this sort of thing, and get some help, do the best you can. So if you fail out, you'll say, I did my best, I couldn't help it. I don't think you will. As I look at your bright faces, I don't think you will fail out. I, one time, over here in my office in this college, had a young man say to me, I had him in class, and he said, Miss Roach, you think I'm rotten in English, don't you? He asked me. I was a teacher in class. He got the papers back. He knew what I thought about him from the papers I handed back. Don't you know? And I said, well, I don't think it makes so much difference what I think about you. What do you think about yourself? He said, well, I think I'm rotten. And then I said, I guess you and I agree. Listen. He said, well, I'll tell you why I'm so bad. I had such rotten teachers in high school. See, there he got an excuse. Well, now, the Lord is good if you say your prayers in the morning and once in a while a little bit at night. I knew what high school he was graduated out. I happened to see down on the second floor where they put up who were the high people in English the semester before. Their names were there. I said, well, I would pay more attention to what you've just said now about those poor teachers if the two people in this college who were the highest in English this semester, had not graduated from your same high school and had the same teachers. He put his arm around me. I like that. What it was, you called his bluff. There's a lot of bluffing going. People finding excuses for this and that and the other thing, don't you see? Well, I always finish up with something like this. I have a whole shoebox full of this. I'm going to publish it sometime. I think I lost one place, but I've got it the other at home anyhow. Tonight when I was... Well, I guess I'll finish with this because it's getting time we should. I have this, and I've written this thing on 6 letters that go in the Christmas letters to my nephews and nieces who live in Eau Claire, who come in real often to see us, bring their children in to see us, bring us down something, call us on the telephone, do so many nice things that that our nieces and nephews who live away can't do. Don't you see? And I've been thinking about that. I had this little poem that had been sent to me as a gift. Mother Dennis, who is the superior of the Benedictine nuns in the priory in Eau Claire, sent it to me. And I have just written it 6 times, and then I over here. It's this little thing. Girls, there must be somebody living in your, what do you call this, your alley, your, what do you call it, your wing. There might be somebody living in your wing. I don't know what it is. There might be somebody living in your wing that might not feel quite at home. There might be somebody someplace that was a little lonely. There might be somebody someplace that had a little difficulty with some class or other. There might be somebody someplace who was tempted beyond what that somebody could resist. Just remember, Satan runs around the world seeking whom he can destroy, and he can tempt any one of us. I have no idea, girl, but when I was a youngster, and a young person like you are, living in the kind of time you do, I might have gone into a tavern sometime. Oh, nobody did when I was a youngster. Nobody did. And a lot of bad things are happening. I gave a commencement address year before last. And during that time, I wanted to say to these high school youngsters, times change. Different things that we do change, but right is right and wrong is wrong, no matter what it is. The other things that we do sometimes change. We wear our dresses shorter, or we wear them longer, or we wear them tighter, or we don't wear them at all. These things change, I said. And then I suddenly thought, I said, when I was a youngster, you couldn't have hired me to go into a tavern to eat a meal. And then I thought about the fact that now most of the lovely big meals I eat are where I have to pass a bar, don't you see? And all that sort of thing. I'm thinking of it real often. And I told that to those high school youngsters. And I didn't have it out of my mouth before I knew that I shouldn't have said it. That wasn't good. I thought, how do you cover this up? And so I said, and I don't know but what I'd be better off if I didn't go now to these children. I said, I go to a certain lovely nightclub and have a meal, and almost every time when I come out, they say to me, Miss Roach, Mr. So-and-so paid for your dinner, and it's somebody who would never treated me if he hadn't been 3 sheets to the wind. That's the truth. That's pure truth. He was a little bit, didn't know just when he was sober, he's never done a thing, but if I can get where he is when he's a little gone, I'd save him $3.